You walk into a room full of people you've never met. Nothing has happened yet. No one has said a word. But somewhere in the back of your skull, a quiet calculation is already running, sorting every face into categories you never agreed to make. Safe, unsafe, familiar, foreign. You didn't choose this. You didn't even notice it happening. But the real answer for why this happens is far stranger than simple nerves. Your brain isn't reacting to the room. It's reacting to 100,000 years of rooms that came before it. Think about the last time you felt a flicker of unease around someone you'd just met. Maybe it was nothing. A tone of voice, an unfamiliar accent, a face that didn't quite match the ones you grew up around. You probably brushed it off. You probably felt a little guilty about it too. Here's the uncomfortable truth. That flicker wasn't random. The neuroscientist Elizabeth Phelps ran a series of studies using brain imaging to track how people responded to faces, some familiar in appearance, some not. When participants viewed faces outside their own racial or social in-group activity in the amygdala, the brain's early warning system for threat tended to spike, especially in participants who showed higher bias on indirect association tests. This wasn't conscious hatred. Most participants didn't even believe they held biased views. The response happened before thought could catch up to it, wired in beneath language, beneath reasoning, beneath the version of you that likes to believe you're fair. Why would evolution build something so uncomfortable? For almost all of human history, you didn't live in a city of strangers. You lived in a band of 20 to 50 people, and every one of them you knew by name, by voice, by walk. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying the size of human social groups across history, and his research points to a consistent ceiling, somewhere around 150 people, as the rough limit of relationships the human brain evolved to track with any real depth. Beyond that number, faces stopped being individuals. They became categories: known, unknown, us, not us. And in that world, unknown wasn't a neutral word. Unknown could mean a rival group encroaching on your territory. Unknown could mean someone who didn't share your rules, your resources, your reasons for trust. A stranger showing up at the edge of camp wasn't just unfamiliar, he was unverified. And unverified for most of human history was dangerous until proven otherwise. So your brain built a shortcut. Fast, automatic, running underneath conscious thought. Familiar face, relax. Unfamiliar face, brace. That shortcut kept your ancestors alive. It also, quietly, became the seed of something far larger. Here's where the story gets harder to sit with. The psychologist Joshua Carell designed an experiment that has been repeated many times since, sometimes called the shooter bias task. Participants sat in front of a screen and had to decide in a split second whether a person in an image was holding a gun or a harmless object like a phone or a wallet. The images varied the race of the person shown. Across many versions of the study, participants, regardless of their own background, were faster to shoot an armed black man than an armed white man, and more likely to mistakenly shoot an unarmed black man than an unarmed white man. Let that sit for a second. This wasn't about conscious racism, measured through a survey where people could perform the answer they knew was expected. This was reaction time, milliseconds, the place where ancient shortcuts live, underneath the reach of deliberate thought. The disturbing part isn't that this bias exists. The disturbing part is where it comes from. It isn't a flaw bolted onto an otherwise clean system. It's the direct, traceable output of the same ancient threat detector that once helped a small band of humans decide in half a second whether the figure approaching the fire was kin or danger. Your brain was built for a world of maybe 150 faces. You now live in a world of billions. That gap is where the trouble lives. The threat detector never got the memo that the world changed. It still runs the old rule. Unfamiliar equals uncertain. Uncertain equals risk. And in a modern world saturated with unfamiliar faces, unfamiliar accents, unfamiliar neighborhoods, that ancient rule doesn't quiet down. It just finds new categories to sort into old boxes. Does this mean you're doomed to see every stranger as a threat forever? Not quite. And this is the part of the research that actually offers a way out. Phelps and other researchers found something crucial buried inside their data. The amygdala's threat response to unfamiliar faces wasn't fixed. It shifted, sometimes dramatically, based on real contact. Participants who had more genuine, sustained relationships with people outside their own in-group showed measurably reduced threat responses to unfamiliar faces from that group. Not because they tried harder to be fair, because their brain had simply updated its definition of familiar. The ancient circuit isn't broken, it's just outdated. And unlike a truly fixed instinct, it can be retrained, not through guilt, not through forcing yourself to feel differently, but through the same mechanism that built it in the first place: repeated, real contact. Consider what this means for the low hum of unease you feel around unfamiliar people, unfamiliar spaces, unfamiliar ideas. That feeling isn't proof that your instincts are correctly identifying danger. It's proof that your instincts are still running code written for a world that no longer exists. Code that once meant survival, now misfiring in elevators, in interview rooms, in the split-second glance at someone crossing the street toward you at night. You inherited a warning system built for tribes of 50. You're using it to navigate a species of 8 billion. Here's the twist most people never consider. The very thing that makes this bias possible, the brain's ability to sort people into in-group and out-group with breathtaking speed, is the same mechanism that let your ancestors form deep, life-saving bonds within their own group. The circuit that made strangers feel dangerous is the same circuit that made your closest people feel like home. It's not two separate systems, one good and one bad. It's one system, drawing a hard line, and the position of that line was never fixed. It moves with exposure. It moves with relationship. It moves with time spent actually looking at someone instead of categorizing them from a distance. Which means the line you draw between us and them was never carved in stone. It was drawn by your particular life, your particular exposure, your particular fire circle, and it can be redrawn by the same forces that first shaped it. This reframes something that feels deeply personal into something almost mechanical and, oddly, less shameful. The flicker of unease around an unfamiliar face isn't a character flaw hiding inside you. It's an ancient alarm, still faithfully doing its old job, running on hardware built for a world of firelight and small bands, not high-rises and crowded subway platforms. Understanding this doesn't excuse acting on it, but it does something almost as important. It takes the shame out of noticing it so you can actually do something about it instead of pretending it isn't there. Every time you sit across from someone unfamiliar long enough to actually see them, every time an unknown face becomes a known name, a known laugh, a known story, you are quite literally updating the oldest software in your brain. You are teaching a 100,000-year-old alarm system where the real line between safety and danger actually sits, in a world it was never designed to navigate alone. Tonight, when you walk into a room full of people you've never met, notice the quiet calculation your brain runs before you've even said hello. That calculation isn't wisdom. It isn't judgment. It's an inheritance, passed down from every ancestor who once needed to know, in an instant, who belonged at the fire and who didn't. And the strangest part of all is this: the moment you learn someone's name, hear their voice crack with laughter, watch them help a stranger without being asked, that ancient alarm quietly stands down and does something it was built to do all along. It lets you widen the circle around the fire. If this changed the way you see the split-second judgments your brain makes without asking you first, hit subscribe. There's a lot more hiding in your everyday reactions than you think. And if a moment from your own life suddenly makes more sense after watching this, drop it in the comments. I read all of them.